most important part of the first coat is to just fill the cracks. Everything else should be nice and thin. Okay, it's time to sand after the first coat of joint compound. And off the first coat, you don't have to do a lot of sanding, you just want to get the highest bumps. And sometimes also you just use a knife to scrape away some of the excess dry stuff and just any chunks that have accumulated anywhere. Maybe you didn't notice when you were going through the first time. On this vinyl stuff, the little streaks and stuff scrape off pretty easy with the knife. And then a little touch up with the sandpaper. Don't worry about getting it perfect, because if you did the first coat right, you don't have it on very thick, and you're going to be putting a lot more of joint compound on top of this first coat. So it's not that big of a deal. You just mainly want to get any big bumps that are sticking up anywhere. I did forget to mention that you can wipe everything down with a wet washcloth. It softens up the joint compound and reduces the amount of dust that you pick up when you do start sanding. I want to demonstrate how annoying lumpy joint compound can be. I got this really lumpy because I scraped off some parts that's solidified on the edges of my bucket. So it's down in here, and it is quite lumpy. When you go to apply it to the wall, I'm about to do on the second coat here. Of course, somehow that came out smooth. I don't know if this will show very well. Let's see, where's all the lumpy stuff I just had a second ago? I got all smooth on me for a second there. Well, jeez. When you want lopsided outcome, there's some of the edges there, but when I first started, it was just like, oh, terrible. There's a good one. I'm going to zoom in on it. Because it was so hard to get to, now that I wanted it. Alright. See that streak right there? Yeah, you can't leave that sort of thing there. And it's very annoying. You get it all nice and smooth out, and then a lump gets in there, and then it drags through your surface and gets it all rough. Pain in the rear. So you really have to work your goo, especially if you're a beginner. Work this stuff over and over again, kind of smashing it on the side of your trough and getting it smoothed out like that, just over and over again until it's nice and creamy and smooth, like yogurt or something, like yogurt without fruit in it. Alright, but when you get these lumps, it's okay, just scrape it all back off and start over again. Don't leave it there, or you'll never get your spot looking good. Also, with the second coat, I don't care about how much I spread. You know, in these last two sessions, when I was doing really just the first coat, but I used about a trough full of this stuff. I will probably use 2 or 3 troughs fulls of this stuff on the same area doing my second coat. The second coat is where you're really going through and building up the level of surfaces so that everything's nice and flush. And I'm also using the big knife now too. You'll never be able to do the job with a smaller knife. The only place I'll use a small knife is in the window seal. And also, I pretty much coat the whole wall in most cases, because just the distance from one surface to the or one seam to the next, and these kind of small areas anyway, the width of the knife's going to span that anyway, so I'm going to have to, you know, it just works out that way. And don't worry about it. It's easier that way. It'll look better when it's all done if you just coat the whole wall. And hopefully you can see these crunchies getting in here. I'm just going to work them down. Just keep working them, working them, working them. It's actually not this hard if you have your joint compound nice and smooth. Don't purposely let solid crunchies get into into your goo. You can work them back in, but if you're new, just don't do it. Buy a new joint compound, it's not that expensive. I will still use my rubber spatula when I get up here into this transition zone from where the wall's smooth to where it is textured already. That's a real tricky area to get right. Those are some, right there, some little bumps that happen because of the texture of the wall. Okay, that can be sanded out, but it's also easier to use the rubber spatula, and when you do use the rubber spatula, it alleviates that problem a little bit. Let's see if I can show. That's the area where I use the rubber spatula more so. You see you don't get those vertical little bumps. If I can find it, remove some of this excess up here. Then I'm going to add a lot back in. I'll need to go quite a bit higher to cover all this. Pretty much anytime you have a joint or a seam, you need to go at least half of your big blade width above and below it. Don't try to skimp, or the joint will show. When you have an area that's wider than a knife, you can start to get the hang of putting more pressure on one side of the knife than the other. On the camera, this line up here at the top, as I drag it through, if I wanted that to go away, what I'll do is I'll put most of the pressure at the bottom of the knife, and so that the top of the knife's not even really touching. And of course, then your line's going to show at the bottom, but you kind of get rid of it at the top. Now that it didn't work so well because this is textured up here. I'm going to have to get my spatula up there. But watch this, you got this real bad line here. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to do it by putting more pressure at the bottom of the knife than the top. You see that pretty much goes away there. And then I go down a notch and do the same thing again and just keep working your way down until you get your ugly line all the way at the bottom where the baseboard will cover it. And of course you can sand that out too. Just don't want to have to sand any more than you have to sand. So again, the object of the second coat is to bring everything out level. I'd say this bullnose rounding goes at least a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, like a bump that you got to cover. So you know you covered it a little bit with the first coat, but yeah, you got to expect you're going to have a 1/8 inch thick-ish coat here this time around. And you really do want to try to, you know, bring it, I don't know, I try to bring this whole inside edge of the window out level with my bullnose. And I just use it as a guide. It's kind of, it's like my guide to float everything nice and level and straight. Yeah, look at that. Did you see me mess up like that? The other thing that used to bug me a lot when I was starting is bubbles form in the joint compound. There'd be like all these little holes in it. And one fix for that was just to work the stuff more, but also sometimes to slow the knife down a little bit. Like, don't pass over quite so fast, and give it a squirt of water on the surface of it. Those two things will help get rid of the bubbles. And those are kind of a pain because sometimes they'll show, I mean, even after you sand, because they're holes, they don't go away.